Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this wire woven Celtic knot ring, and it looks like this. So this is your Celtic knot design at the front and your ring band going all the way around, and it'll sit nice on your finger like this. So give some nice detail but still be kind of a subtle ring as well. So this is the one I'm going to show you how to make today. I've also done a bit more of a simple version of it, where I've weaved the ring band but the actual knot itself is just bare wires. So I've already done a tutorial on this, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below so you can have a look at this. And if you want to learn how to make that, maybe it's an idea to just make that one first, just to get used to the knot a bit more, because obviously this one is kind of the next step after that. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description box like I said, but if you want to learn how to make this one, then keep watching. So these are the things that we'll need. Now all I'm going to need to make this ring is 2 different gauges of wire here, and these are both regular round wire, and I'm just working with a copper wire here. Now the first one is a 0.6mm, and that's going to be our base wires, and this is a 0.25mm, and that's going to be the wrapping wire. What I'm also going to use is just my ring mandrel here to help me size the ring and shape the ring band as well. If you don't have a ring mandrel, you can always use something like a marker pen or something else, as long as you make sure that it has the right size that you want your ring to be. And then also just a basic selection of your basic pliers. So let's get all the materials together and then let's get started. So what I've done first is I've cut 4 lengths of my 0.6mm wire here, so the base wire, and they're each about 30 centimeters long. Now it's going to be longer than what we need, but we do need to have enough to just be able to work with it at the end as well. So we need to cut these wires. And then as for the 0.25 wire, so the wrapping wire, what I'm going to do is work with this off of the reel, so I'm not going to cut it off, just because it can be difficult to know exactly how much you're going to need, and you'll have less wastage as well. So what we need to do is start wrapping the ring band first. So I'm going to have all my base wires ready here, so the 0.6mm, and we're just going to start with one at a time, and then build it up, and then I'm going to take my 0.25mm, get ready with that. And then what I'm going to do, like I said, work off the reel, but I'm just going to leave a fairly long tail first. So maybe leave a tail of about 60 to 70 centimeters, that should be fine. First of all, you can use that to kind of help hold on to begin with, but also we're going to need that later on when we kind of make the actual knot as well. So we need to attach this 0.25mm wire to the 0.6mm wire first. So what I'm going to do is bring it behind and go from find about the middle of your 0.6mm wire, and then go a bit to the side. So maybe about a few centimeters to one side there, because what we're going to do is the wrapping going across the middle, so the actual wrap that we're going to do is going to end up about the middle of our wires there. So just a rough estimate, it doesn't have to be precise. And then from behind the 0.6mm wire, I'm going to wrap around that once, just like this. And then I'm going to bring in my next 0.6mm wire, place that on top. We're using this tail as well to hold on to, and just place that on top of that first wrap. And then the wire's coming from the back again, so go around the front, but now go around both wires. And then we're coming back up, we need to come up in between the wires. So like that. And then grab your next 0.6mm wire, place that on top of these again. So you now have 3, adding one to the top every time, going around the top 2 wires now, and then we'll go around the back and come up in between the 2 wires that you just wrapped around. So in between the top 2, and then add the last one on top again. So we're slowly attaching all the wires together here, one at a time. I wrapped around both of them, and then come in between those 2 when you come back around to the top 2 again. Like that. And then just once around the top one. So that's the first wrap that we've done basically. And all the wires are attached now. It's still a bit loose, but it's going to get easier once we do a bit more. And that's the wrap is then going to kind of hold all these wires together. So it's coming towards the back at the top there. So what we need to do is bring it all the way around the back of them, back down to the bottom. So we're going to start from the beginning again, And what can help is just to kind of gently splay out your wires a little bit out on the side where you're wrapping around. So a bit like that. You have a bit more space in there then. And then what we need to do first is wrap around the bottom one once again. Like that. Then wrap around the bottom two. So go around the same one you've just gone around, but then the next one as well. And come down between the middle of them all. Come up between the two you just wrapped around. And every time, as you can see, I'm pushing the wrap down with my finger. Doesn't have to be too much force, but just so it comes nice and close together. A nice and neat wrap. Then go up 2 wires, so wrap around the next 2. Up between the 2 you just wrapped around. And around the top 2. And between the top 2 to come back up. So you're just wrapping around that single one at the top. So like this. And then once just around that top one on its own. And then we're done another wrap. And this is basically what you want to keep doing now. This is the wrap that we're going to be doing throughout the whole ring band. So just keep doing this until you get in a section that you think is going to be long enough for your ring band. So I now kept wrapping the same weave here until I reached about a length that I think is going to be just right for my ring band. And then what you'll find as well is both sides of your weave here isn't exactly the same. So when we start to shape this, what you need to do is just decide what side you want to be kind of the main focus of the ring band. So be pointing outward, because one side is the weave that I showed you that way, but then what I kind of call the back side here is a bit different. You have one wrapping wire that goes across all your base wires when you do your wraps. So it's completely up to you. Both sides are really nice in their own way, so you decide which one you want to use. So what we need to do now before we move on is just double check the length of this, that it's going to be the right size for the ring band, and to do that we need to get out the ring mandrel. So what I'm going to do is just shape this around the ring mandrel just to make sure, and I've chosen the side that I want. So the one that I kind of call the back side, I want to be facing in towards the ring mandrel, and then I'm going to place that behind here and just start shaping it. Just obviously do it to the size that you want your ring to be, and just shape it around. And then what we need to check is that the weave ends in the right place. So we don't want the weave to end, say, right on the top here if your wires cross over and then meet. We don't want the weave to go all the way up there. It needs to end actually a bit down the side. So just come up a bit further than the side of your ring mandrel or whatever else you're using. So this is actually just perfect. So that's how you want to make sure your weave sits. And then we also kind of have the shape of the ring band now. Don't worry too much about that because we're still working on it. So what I'm actually going to do is just bend it out a little bit more. So I do have the basic shape, but we're going to then keep working on these wires now and do a bit more weaving. So now that we know that the ring band is just right size wise, what we can do is then actually go in and cut off the rest of this weaving wire off the reel that we're working from, just because we also need to cut some new lengths off as well. What we need to do now is start making the part that's going to actually form the knot. So we work on one side at a time, and then what we need to do is actually separate out these base wires a little bit. So you have your 4, so we need to split them down the middle. So 2 to one side and 2 to the other side, and just put a gentle bend in there now. So we can always adjust this a little bit more once we've weaved a bit. So just so you have 2 coming towards each their own side like this. And then what we need to do is continue the weave out on these wires, on the base wires. So what we still have a weaving wire attached on each end here that we're just going to continue using, and we're going to be doing the exact same weave basically. The only difference is we only have 2 base wires instead of 4, but the weave is the same. So I'm going to come back down around the back side of the 2 wires, just once around the bottom one, and press it all the way in, once around both, like that, and then once around just the top one. So as you can see, it's the exact same weave that we did for the ring band, just with less base wires. And keep doing that. So you want to keep doing this a way out, and this is with the original weaving wire that's still attached to your whole piece here, because it's basically coming from the ring band. So that's easing up for that. And then what we need to do as well is do the same thing on the other side here. So to be able to start that same weave on the other two base wires here, what we need to do is attach a new wire. So just cut off a length of your 0.25mm wire again, about 50 centimeters will be fine. And then what I'm going to do is we need to attach this to then start doing the same weave. So I'm just going to slide it down in between the two base wires just to start off with, and just leave a very short tail there just for you to hold on to. And we'll start off just doing the exact same thing. So wrap once around the bottom wire, once around both, and then just once around the top one. So as you can see, again, the exact same weave and the same one that we're doing up here. So what we're now doing is forming kind of two legs coming out from the ring band with the same weave, just with less base wires. So you want to keep doing this to both of them. And what we need is, I'll say, weave about 2 centimeters worth of weave on here. Now it doesn't have to be exact, because we can always add a bit more once we've formed the knot, or even take a bit away if it's a bit too much. But around 2 centimeters. And then once you do this, you want to move to the other side as well. Do the exact same thing. So use the one that's already attached. Separate your wires out here, same way. Start with the top one, weave around there with the same weave. Attach a new wire to down here, and then start like I just showed you as well. And again, about 2 centimeters on both sides. And obviously what you'll find is you're going to have quite a few wires kind of waving around, but that's why you can always cut them down to a bit shorter lengths once you've done a bit. Because then what we need to use these weaved lengths for is to then actually create the knot. So just take your time doing this, try and move your other wires out of the way once you're working on a specific piece. So do this for a little bit, and then I'll show you how we actually make the knot. So I've now done all the sections here, and I've got my weave going out about 2 centimeters or so. And then what we have, as you can see, is a bit of a wire mess really. We have quite a few ends and tails left. We just leave everything on till now, because I'm going to use the weaving wire in that at the end anyway to fasten everything together. And as you can see, I've opened up the ring band quite a bit as well. But like I said, don't worry too much about that, because once we've made the knot and we're tightening everything in, we're going to reshape this around the ring mandrel. So now what we need to do is actually create the knot. And to do that, we want to start with preparing all the sections on the side here. So just start with one side at a time. And then as you can see, just make sure that they're coming out from the ring band at quite an even angle, so it looks nice and neat like that. And then what we need to do is create a curve here in each section, coming back inwards again. And just try and get a nice gentle curve in there. Nice smooth one. Coming back in like that. And then what else is, just trying to try and keep the weaving wire almost with your base wires there, almost as if they were one wire. But just obviously be a bit careful with it. And then the same on the other side. Shape that to come back in across the middle, and then just cross them over here as well. So it looks roughly something like that. And to the other side, do the same thing. Just need to shape the wires a bit first. It's just get a gentle curve for now, just so we have something to work with really. And then do the other one, and then bend that over. So what we end up with is almost a bit of an eye shape, because they cross over there in the middle as well. So just like this, and then what we have now is an eye shape on each side there. So what we need to do now is bring these two towards each other. And like I said, just try and keep your weaving wires kind of out of the way, and pretend like they're one of the base wires as well, like it's all one. We need to bend these towards each other a little bit to get this started off. So like this. And then what we need to do with the two sides is we need to intertwine the whole thing. So basically the way that this knot works is that every opposite one is going over and under. So I'm going to show you that as we go. But what we need to do first is, these ones happen to be coming underneath the other ones. So I'm just going to bend them a little bit further, and that's going to be the starting point. And we're going to keep that crossover as well, because that's going to be part of the knot. Obviously once we tighten it up, but that's going to be part of the look as well. And then what we need to do, this is now coming, these two are coming underneath. So what we need to do is make sure to place the rest of them here in the right direction. So what we're going to do is on this side, so in my case the right one here, on the inside there, that one's actually crossing over the other one. So we're just going to work with that, and then I'm going to make sure that that crosses over the other one from the opposite side here as well. So we just need to open it out a little bit again. So I'm going to take this one, bring it out to the side, and then what we need to do is take the ends, just kind of gently bend it, don't get too many kinks in there, and then bring it through the ring band, and then also make sure you bring through your weaving wire with it. So just do this gently, bring it all the way through, like that. So that now is positioned underneath. It comes over kind of the end of your base wires here from the other side, but it goes underneath the one straight across from it. So that's the one side, and just leave it to come through the ring band there. On the other side here, we're also going to let it come over the first one, so it's crossing over from the opposite, the diagonally opposite one. And then what we need is we need to just have a look at what else is going on. So this side, like I said, that's coming from the upside here, that one is going over the other one on that side. So this one, this diagonally opposite, needs to also go over the one that's straight across from it. So that means we need to go down, come over that, but then go down in that I shape basically, just like that. But what we just need to make sure is that we're kind of going down in the right place, because you kind of have the wire from the other side splitting up that I shape in two, so you have two places you can go down. And then what we need to do is make sure we go down before that one. Bring your weaving wire with you as well. Sometimes you can help getting that through first, so it kind of gets it out of the way, just like that. And then bring the two base wires down, just gently. So bring them down through there, and then coming through the ring band as well. So just like that. And then we're looking at it, and what we need to do is just make sure everything sits right, then that the knot is completely correct. And we basically double check that by just making sure all the wires are crossing over correctly. And like I said, what this knot is about is that it's basically over, under, just with the exception of some of the kind of tails of them, of the sections here. So that means that the ones that are diagonally opposite, so those two, they're both going over everything. So here in the middle section, so they sit correctly. The two opposite ones, diagonally opposite, they're going under, so that's correct. And then what we just need to do is check as well that the rest are sat correctly here. And actually I can see that they're not quite just yet. So that means the crossover sections here, once, so for instance this one, it comes over. So that one actually needs to go down in the first space and not the second one. So that one's actually not correct. So what I'm going to do is just gently bring this back out. This was one of the first ones we did anyway, so we didn't actually weave this into anything. We weaved other ones around it. So just try and keep the curve there. So instead of that second place we're going in between, we need to come down in the first one. Bring your weaving wire with you. And just do all these movements nice and gently. So you're keeping the rough idea of your curves there that you put in originally, but you also don't get any obvious kinks or bends in your wire. So just keep your smooth curves, and don't be too worried about it, because we can still adjust it after here. So this is more correct now. So that's why just double check. Once you think your knot is correct, just double check it, because we need to make sure everything is going over, under, basically opposite ones. So now all the outer ones sit correctly, and then the crossover ones in the middle here, you just need to make sure that the one that comes over here on the outside goes under the one in the middle and then comes out through the ring band, same the opposite way. So this is what the knot looks like now, and it's completely correct. All this is not quite finished yet, because as you can see it's quite open, and also the ring band here is a little bit large. So that's what we need to do now. The knot is finished and all that, we got the weave in place. So now what we need to do is start tightening this up a little bit. And for this you just want to spend a bit of time on doing this, because it's just maneuvering the wires a bit basically. So just gently push them together to tighten it up a bit, both the ring band but also the actual knot itself, and then you can kind of just pull these a little bit. And as you can see, it kind of wants to sit off center, but that's why just take your time, maneuver it in place until it's completely how you want it to be. And you can also open up some of the curves a bit more. So as you can see, you're getting the rough idea of the knot. It's still a bit too large, so what I'm going to do as well, while it's open still, put it back on my ring mandrel, because that's going to also help us to then, obviously first of all, get the right size for the ring and the shape back in the ring band. But it's also going to help with the actual knot. So I'm just going to press them together here when I've chosen whatever size that I want. And then also just make sure to kind of, if you need to pull anything a bit here, just do that gently. And you can just try and hold it on your ring mandrel there. It's going to help you get the whole thing in place. So just keep maneuvering these wires around until they sit exactly how you want them to sit. Let's just take a bit of time on doing this, tightening up this knot and then getting the right size. So do this until you're completely happy with it. So I've now kept maneuvering the wires here until I'm getting more happy with the actual knot. And what I also can recommend that you can do, like I said, put it back on the ring mandrel as well to help you shape it. And then while it's on the ring mandrel and you're kind of getting closer to the knot that you want, it's getting tighter, what can be a tip as well is to get your chain nose pliers. I would recommend the chain nose pliers. Use them to also help just ease the wires exactly where you want it to go. Obviously do it gently and carefully because you're working with some fine wire here, the weaving wire, but also just to not mark it or scratch it. But also, because the weave's here on the side, remember you've got two base wires next to each other, so what you can do is help kind of squeeze them flat so it lies flat instead of kind of maybe tilting up or down. So just as you're moving the wires around, make sure to do that as well. Otherwise you can just gently use your pliers to help maneuver the wires in place, because it can be a little bit hard to do with your fingers. So just keep doing this until you're completely happy, and also that it has the size of the ring that you want now. And then once you're happy with the knot, what we need to do, we've got all these ends left, so what we need to do is get rid of them and then tighten the whole thing securely in place. So to finish off the ends, I'm going to take it off the ring mandrel again, because we obviously need to have a bit of space there to work with. And then we're going to look at all the individual wires here and finish them off. And what you're going to be able to see as well, this is where you can then check your weave. If you need to weave a bit more because it ends a bit too soon, especially if you look from underneath, so if it ends kind of say a bit further in so you can actually see some of the bare wire in the actual knot, you want to just add a bit more weave to it, the exact same weave. If you've done a bit too much, like I can see on this one, I just have a little bit too much because it's actually sticking out on the side there. And then you can always just unweave some of it. And just do this gently. So basically go back in the same path, or the opposite path really, than you did the actual weave, just to undo a little bit. So I need to do that on this one, just a few wraps, and then maybe just one or two on this side as well. Otherwise it looks pretty good to me. So if you need to adjust any of your weave, just do that now, so the bare wires start underneath here, towards the sides of your knot, so it kind of finishes underneath so you can't see it. So now that I've undone some of my weave there, so on the back they all end in the right place, so where the bare wires start. And it's perfectly fine to undo some of the weave, just obviously do it gently, and as every time you then undo one wrap, just smooth it out with your finger, just to try and avoid it getting too damaged, because if you smooth it out then it'll last a bit longer if you just need to reuse it again. So just do that gently, that's absolutely fine, because then we're just still going to use these weaving wires here just to kind of secure the knot in place as well. What I also have left are these short ends, one on each side there. Those are the ones where I added in the extra wire to do extra wraps there. What I'm going to do now is actually get rid of them, because I know everything's in place, my weave is the way I want it to be, and the knot as well. So I'm going to get my flush cutters. You can also reuse regular wire cutters if you don't have them, but I do really like using flush cutters, especially for things like this, because it really gets in there and cuts off the wire right up close, as close as you can get really. Whereas wire cutters, you'll have to then take your chain nose pliers and just smooth it down, which I do with flush cutters anyway, but there's less to smooth down because you want to run your finger over it and make sure you don't have that very end of your wire sticking out, because especially with it being a ring, it's going to scratch or catch on your skin or clothes or something. So just make sure of that. Cut that down so it's nice and smooth. Same on the other side as well. And just obviously try and move things around without ruining the knot that you've already made here on the front. And just smooth that one down as well. And the end is kind of just going to get hidden there in between the weave that you've already done. So it won't be visible, just make sure that you can't feel it either. So just press it down with your chain nose pliers. So now what is left to do is finish off the base wire, so all these ends, and then also secure the knot in place so obviously it doesn't move around so much when we're wearing it. So I'm going to go to the back for that. So if you look closely on yours, you'll see as well, if you've kind of ended your weave in the right place, you'll just have bare wires just crossing behind the wire, the weaved wires here that they are crossing behind. They'll be bare wires, because what we need to do is actually kind of coil them down, but only just slightly. And that's how I want to secure it in place, because I kind of don't want to be able to see these ends from the front when you're looking at the knot. So I want it to be kind of just the knot that you can see to make it nice and neat. So we're going to start with one at a time, one section here at a time. And then what we're going to do is make sure everything sits correctly, and I like to kind of just hold my knot in place with my fingers like this to just make sure that it doesn't move around too much, because obviously it can distort a little bit while we're doing this work. So what I'm going to do is cut these down pretty short, because I only just want a very short length to kind of bend back around and use that to secure the end in place. So just cut it just a bit out from the frame underneath. So just enough for us to basically make a bit of a loop, just like that we can then hide underneath. Get your round nose pliers. If you can get some with a fine tip, that's best. And just take one of your base wires at a time here. So you can maybe just move one a bit out of the way first. And then take the inner one and just start like you were going to just do a loop here. And just loop it around. Make sure it comes and sits on the inside of the ring, and just try and get it as fine as possible. If you don't have that fine round nose pliers, you can also just get the loop started and then take your chain nose pliers and then help maneuver it back around. It's not going to be completely round probably then, but it doesn't really have to be. We just need something there, a bit of a loop that's going to be very small and subtle, but just something to anchor with as well, so with the weaving wire. So just maneuver it in place so that it's going to sit, the actual loop is going to sit behind some of your weaved wires here, so you won't be able to see it from the front, but also with the nature of it being a little loop rather than just a sharp end, it's going to be more likely that we can then actually hide it, so you won't be able to feel it either, because this part is always going to be against the skin. So just kind of keep working in your loop here, get it as small as possible, just so we can use that loop for the weaving wire to then secure it in place. So now that I have a very small loop just there, laid just behind the weaved wires, so from the front here, so I just keep going back and checking the front. You can't really see a loop there, or see any wire behind apart from the one that's sticking out, but that's the one we've got to do next. So once that loop is just the right size, small enough there, then to sort the other wire out. Now if you have enough space, or if you got fine enough pliers, then you can maybe make a loop with that as well, but there isn't really much space there to do that with without it being able to stick out on the side here. So what I'm actually going to do is cut it down just a little bit more. So you just have a couple millimeters left, and then take my chain nose pliers, and then instead of making an actual loop, I'm just going to bend it towards the other loop, so the actual very tip of it, and kind of maneuver it in so it lies right next to it, and maybe even if you can, get the very end of it just to tuck in right underneath the loop, because you might have just a little bit of space there, and just keep kind of feeling it, and if you can still feel it, the end is still sticking out, and also keep checking from the front. So if you can see anything, then obviously you just need to do a bit more maneuvering. But that's what I'm going to do with the other wire. So kind of just tuck it in, and then once you're also done with that, you can always cut off a little bit extra if it's still just a little bit too long. Make it just a bit easier to tuck in. Then what I'm going to do as well, when you're happy with both your loop and that other wire, you want to just kind of squeeze them with the weaved wires just on top there. Not like really hard, but just so they lie nice and flush and you don't have your ends sticking out there either. So that's how I'm going to then finish off those. And then what we need to do when you're happy with that is use the weaving wire that's from that section, so from that leg, and kind of attach this in place, and also using the loop so it's going to stay in the same place that we want it to. So once you're happy with your loop and your end of your wire there, you can't see it and you can't feel it, then to use this weaving wire to secure it in place. And it is alright to finish the base wire off like this, because when you look from the side you can actually see that some of these sections of wire are kind of raised a bit anyway, so there is that space in between the sections and your skin to then just tuck in those ends. So it's completely fine. And then what we need to do is use this and just check where your weaving wire is coming from. Mine is coming from the back of that section and then around the bottom here. So I want to weave back the correct direction, just so I'm not undoing my weave, and then go back around to capture this section, but then we need to connect it with the section on top here. So you just want to kind of find a spot where you can just, you want to go just over it once or twice here, but where you can just kind of pull your wire tight, so that when you do that, because it's such a fine wire, it will kind of just blend in with your weave. If you look close, you will be able to see that obviously then you have an extra wrap kind of compared to the rest of the weave, but because it's such a fine wire, you won't really notice that much. So I'm going to go back around the front there, and then come back through the back. And what I'm going to make sure to do as well, just catch that loop, and if you can, maybe go through it. If you can't, then just make sure to go below the loop, because that loop is a bit of a stopper for the wire, otherwise the base wires could just slip out of your wrap here. So just like this. Now I've caught that loop, and check the other side, and you just want to check your wrap there. And before you do another one, you want to make sure that this sits correctly. So make sure that this wrap that you just done doesn't kind of cross over several wires. You want it to kind of be able to pull tight, and then it falls down or tucks in between the wraps, the weave that you did originally there. So pull a bit tight, make sure it sits correctly, and then it's going to blend in just nicely there. So once you've done that first wrap and it sits nice and tight, so it just kind of blends in with your weave, you can't see it really, then what we need to do is go back around. What you can also just do with that first one, if it doesn't want to go completely down by itself by just pulling the wire, you can always take your chain nose pliers and help press it down. Just make sure it's not crossing over wires but actually nestling in between. And also when you're pulling, you don't want to pull too tight, especially if you undid some of your weave here like I had to do on some of them, because the wire is a little bit more kind of damaged then, a little bit more brittle. So just make sure you don't pull it too tight, rather use your chain nose pliers then in that case. But then I'm going to come around the front again, make sure the wire nestles in between the weave, and then back to the inside of the ring. And then it's really just a matter of finishing this off, because I've gone around twice now, and that's going to be nice and secure because we're doing it multiple places. So it's not just this one that's holding the whole thing in place. We're going to be doing on all the ends the same thing here. And also you don't want to fill in your weave too much, because it's going to become more obvious if you do too many wraps. So go around the back and just kind of basically find where you can get this in, your weaving wire, and then it's just a matter of finishing it off. So if you can, go through the loop maybe one more time, and I'm just coming out on the other side just for now, because that's where it's coming out naturally, like that. And then I'm just going to check it to make sure that that wrap nestles in between the weave, just like that. And pull it nice and tight. And then instead of going around again, I'm just going to come down through the same hole in your knot, but just around that loop. So we're starting to kind of just finish off this weaving wire now. And just take your time, because obviously you have still a lot of wires going on, to not get too caught and tangled up. So I'm back on the inside, and then you can just kind of do this a couple of times, wrap around. So then once you're happy it's going to be nice and secure, what I'm going to do is then go in and cut off this weaving wire nice and close, but just leave maybe about 1 millimeter or so, because I'm going to use that end to then tuck in anywhere that you can really get it. So if you can get the actual end to go inside the loop, that'll be brilliant, because obviously you don't want it sticking out, because this is on the inside as well. So just gently take your chain nose pliers, and then kind of, I like to roll in the direction that the wire is actually going. So something like this, and you can always just squeeze the loop down just to make sure it's nice and flush still. Make sure you feel it with your fingers, go over it, and if you can feel anything, just do a bit more squeezing or rolling until you can't feel it at all, because then you won't be able to feel it either when you're wearing it. So that's that one finished off now, and it's still looking nice on the front here. So the original knot that we made, we're happy with that. So then that's the one end finished off, the one section. So all you need to do now really is go back through all of them and do the exact same thing. So move to the next one, do the same thing, make your little tiny loop with the one wire, and I like to do the one that's furthest towards the ring band. That's just because there tend to be a bit more space there, but just do where you feel is the best space for it. And then the other one you can cut down and then just tighten it in place with the weaving wire. So do this all the way around and finish off your ends, and then basically when you've done that we'll have the finished ring. So now that you've finished off all the ends here on the back, and you can see it's nice and neat, and we've hidden all the ends there behind the other weaves, so from the front you can't really see any of the ends. And also make sure, run your fingers over it all so you can't feel anything, because then if you can't feel anything it'll be nice and comfortable to wear, and it'll sit like this on your finger. A nice little Celtic knot, quite a subtle ring but still really nice detail to it. So that's how you make this wire woven Celtic knot ring. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make these Celtic knot wire work earrings, and they look like this. So quite simple, they have a nice dangle to them, and just because of the gemstone that I added there, it also gives a bit of colour, but you have this nice effect. But they're quite simple and easy to make, so if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. So these are the few things that we'll need to make these earrings. Now here I have my wire, and this is a